This podcast may contain explicit language. We all lie to ourselves to be happy. Memento is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I see myself in the monitor. I think I remember I'm Dana Duncan.
Did you have it tattooed somewhere? Is it written down? When was the last time you shaved your left thigh?
About the same time I shaved my right thigh. We won't discuss anything else.
Oh, okay. We're just leaving it right there. Okay.
Yeah, we won't discuss any other shaving.
Tonight for our 305th episode, we discuss the crime thriller Memento from 2001, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, cinematography by Wally Pfister, music by David Julian, editing by Dodie Dom, starring Guy Pearce as Leonard Shelby, Carrie-Anne Moss as Natalie, Joe Pantoliano as John Edward Teddy Gamble, Mark Boone Jr. as Bert, Russ Fega as a waiter, Georgia Fox as Catherine Shelby, Stephen Tobolowsky as Samuel R. Sammy Jankus, Harriet Sansom Harris as Mrs. Jankus. Background for the movie: Memento was wide released on April 16th, 2001, making this its 25th anniversary. On a budget between $5 to $9 million, Memento grossed roughly over $40 million and finished at number 86 at the worldwide box office for 2001. It was immediately lauded by critics with near universal acclaim. The film was on both the National Board of Review and the AFI Top 10 list for 2001, and Memento was nominated for 2 Oscars: Original Screenplay and Film Editing. In 2005, the Writers Guild of America ranked the screenplay number 100 on its list of the 101 greatest screenplays ever written. In 2012, the Motion Picture Editors Guild listed the film as the 14th best edited film of all time, based on a survey of its membership. In 2017, the United States Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry. In 2021, members of the Writers Guild of America West and East ranked its screenplay 10th in their 101 greatest screenplays of the 21st century so far. Dad, do you want to take a guess at any of the screenplays that ranked ahead of it that year? Now, mind you, this is 2021.
2021. Screenplays that ranked ahead of it. The Prestige.
No. I will say none of these 9 are Christopher Nolan films, so
okay,
you can take that out right off the top.
The Godfather?
The 21st century, so since 2000.
Okay, sorry. The Departed?
No. I don't think that would have been near the top for screenplay. It's a very imperfect movie that we'll discuss later on this summer, but all right. Since you're scrambling, you're scrambling around in the dark. Again, this is 2021, so some of these should be rather obvious. But 9 was Almost Famous, which I kind of agree with after seeing it last year. 8, Inglourious Bastards. 7, There Will Be Blood. 6, Moonlight. 5, No Country for Old Men. So they're in the debate of which one is better. At least in this contest, No Country for Old Men did place ahead, mind you. Parasite was number 4. 3, The Social Network. 2, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And number 1 was Get Out. For whatever it's worth, just thought I'd put that out there. Memento currently holds a 93% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 83 score on Metacritic, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. However, because we cannot do this by ourselves, we bring in our returning celebrity guest, the European correspondent for the Revisionist Almanac, a CLP contributor, a High Council member of the CLP, making her 4th appearance on the show to date, the Question Queen Supreme. Please welcome back Heather Stewart.
hello. I'm getting closer to my 5.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't know.
Something.
We haven't sent a hat internationally. I know we sent a T-shirt to Down Under, but as far as a hat internationally, I don't think we've done that quite yet. Now, I know you have more specifically than anybody requested, basically begged for space on every Christopher Nolan movie that we have going forward. And while that has not shown up in every single one that is on our current schedule through the end of next year, this one you did get.
This I did.
You boxed everybody out. So why is this so important for you to get?
To be perfectly honest, because I hadn't seen it for so long, and I need to revisit all the Christopher Nolan films to kind of reorganize them as well for coming up for the Odyssey. And yeah, it was one that I felt I needed to reassess because, ironically, my memory was, I felt, not quite so good of the film. I need to revisit this. So, yeah, that's it. I knew it was one that I had ranked fairly high, but I couldn't quite remember why.
So, I have only seen this film once. It did not impress me the first time through.
I remember you saying.
I think in my Christopher Nolan rankings that I had on Letterboxd, I had this at number 9 out of 11. Only in front of Insomnia, which is just okay. I mean, I understand what he was trying to do, and he was taking somebody else's script and somebody else's property and working with two bona fide movie stars in that moment. And it was more for his career than it was him doing his own work and cementing himself, putting his stamp on something, which really, from basically Batman Begins on, that's the universe of true Christopher Nolan that we've ever gotten. The only other one that I had below it, and it's going to be the bottom basically forever, in perpetuity, unless Christopher Nolan betrays me yet again, will be the scourge that is Tenet.
Where do you have the following? Sorry, not the following. Following.
I have following... Well, before I re-ranked them, I will say I re-ranked them after watching this.
Okay, right.
So you can go find that on my Letterboxd now if you so wish. I think I had it at number 6 or 7. I'm much higher on that film than most people. For a Christopher Nolan film, which exceedingly, these films have gotten 2.5, 3 hours long, almost per film. I don't remember, like, whether you want to talk about Interstellar's like 2 hours and 40 minutes or any of the Dark Knight trilogy seems to be well over 2 hours. I think Dark Knight Rises is like 2:45. Oppenheimer was almost exactly 3 hours. So there's somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. To watch Following, and it's like an hour and 10 minutes, was such a nice breath of fresh air. But he still accomplishes so much in that movie. It's not perfect. The acting leaves a little bit to be desired, but you can see all of the machinations and the things that he constantly is exploring, the nonlinear storytelling, the imperfect narrator or protagonist type of characters, which we get a lot of in here, and you can kind of see where he's going with what he will become from all of it. So I very much enjoyed it because, for the most part, he's probably my favorite director. Like, as much as I enjoy certain movie stars, such as I've said Matt Damon recently is probably my favorite actor at this point, I don't go out to watch movies just because Matt Damon is in them. Like The Rip that came out on Netflix a couple of months ago or something. I still haven't watched it. But anytime you say that there's going to be a certain director that's putting out a film, I'm there. And Christopher Nolan is on that list. Tarantino's on that list, although at this point that's... Oh, boy. Yeah. There are certain other directors that anytime they put something out, Denny is... Well, I mean, it helps that Denny is also putting out a James Bond movie, which I was going to be there for anyway. But, okay. Point taken. But regardless of that, I think directors in my film going have become much more important than the individual stars or as such. And so because of this... Nolan is one of the few directors that I've seen everything that he's done, at least that is available. I haven't seen some of his student films that like are very well hidden and kept away from the public. But of the 11 movies, this one moved a little bit up in my estimation this time around. So I'll say that much.
Okay.
Dad, you notably have never seen this film. So, first impressions.
Would you like the first impression for the first half of the film or the first impression for the second half of the film?
Yes.
First half of the film, what the fuck is this?
I knew you were going to have such a hard time trying to follow it.
Second half of the film, okay, now I get it.
The opening sequence where it's told it quite literally in reverse is supposed to get you thinking in that capacity and not very handholdy. It's one of the Nolans that doesn't give you that certain level of comfort and exposition to say, this is the kind of thing we're involved in. It's going to be a little bit trippy. We're just going to kind of move you through it and hope you pick up on it eventually. And so, yes, I think there's a point in watching this film where you realize that you're jumping back and forth in time and that eventually the two sides will meet. I think in a interview he did, he drew it as like a U in time, and then he put this line in between it. So he said, you're just basically jumping back and forth on this prism until eventually they meet up in the middle.
There's also, if you so wanted, there is a version that was made. Somebody's made the effort to do the chronological version of this. So you could do it yourself, of course, by just like rewinding and whatever. But there is that version out there, which I've not seen because I don't think I need that. I don't think I necessarily want that, because I think once you kind of understand what's going on, you're following it. And the whole point of this film and the whole, also, I mean, to your point with Tenet as well, it's kind of like similar, but I know you don't like Tenet, but it is kind of, it disorientates you a bit, and that's the whole point. So if you're watching it chronologically, you're kind of losing that, uniqueness, perhaps, of the film.
The formatting and the storytelling device is very central to how you perceive the film. And until you kind of pick up on it, I related very similarly in watching certain Christopher Nolan films. Like, some people just don't get into Inception because they don't like the supposed trippiness, or that it's a very high concept type of world making involving dreams and what the rules of the dreams are, et cetera, et cetera. If you just don't get into this headspace, I don't know if you're ever going to enjoy this film. And some people just don't. Like, I don't think it's meant for the average person to just, like, sit down and watch. I think this is a little bit, again, high concept for somebody to sit down and try and enjoy. This is not The Dark Knight, where I think just the average person can definitely enjoy, or many of other Nolan's other films. Like, you can watch The Prestige and have a good time without having to, like, really think too hard. This is not one of those films.
I mean, the difference, I think, with Inception as well is to me, I think that Inception, and I love Inception, it's like my second favorite of his filmography. To me, there's a lot more exposition in Inception to kind of explain to the audience, whereas in this one, okay, you've got the black and white stuff where he's kind of explaining over, the phone a little bit just to fill in some gaps or backstory. But it's kind of like it leaves you to, and sure, it spells out a bit more at the end, depending on who you believe. We'll come to that. But to me, I noticed on my last Inception rewatch that the exposition, which a lot of people do criticize, it is quite extreme, whereas this one, you're really thrown into it and you're kind of like, you just have to come along with it.
Well, I don't mind the level of exposition in the first half because they do that in order to world build a lot of stuff. And you have to. This film, you don't have to as much because you're dealing with, other than basically explaining his condition and then using the visual cues That's the only world building you need to do in this movie. Whereas the concept of the dream and all the time elements that are going on at multiple different levels and how it affects those you have to actually go through and explain, because people aren't just going to know it from common knowledge.
Right. And it needs to be brought in somehow. You need to explain it. Otherwise, they're just not going to get the different levels. Of course not.
The biggest problem is if you start the film, if you're trying to understand it, that's where the frustration comes in. It's almost like those blurred pictures where you have to guess what this is going to be. You just have to wait until it comes enough into focus before you start thinking. The minute I realize that I'm not supposed to understand this, I'm supposed to be as confused as Guy Pearce.
Exactly.
Then I'm like, okay, I'll just sit back and wait, and eventually it'll all become clear, and I can. So the frustration level dropped, but it took a while for me to figure out that I needed to do that.
Yeah. And I think that is the point of that they want you to be in that situation with Guy Pearce, that you don't know what's true, and in the whole disorientation. Very specifically, they don't want you to feel comfortable. You're discovering as he does.
But I think there's a way that you can use this film to interpret just about every Christopher Nolan film that comes after it. Whether 100%. It's the use of black and white versus the color commentary, which he's used in a couple of other films, most specifically that people remember in Oppenheimer, to kind of jump back and forth in time, where you have the current modern day and then you have the past, and they're kind of meeting up at different times. You can explain Tenet and Inception through the use of the nonlinear structure through this film and jumping back and forth. So all of those things, I think there is a way that you can use this as a skeleton key to unlock the rest of his work. Because, to be fair, even to Following, which has kind of that surprise element, and it seemingly every one of his films has some type of twist angle to it, or some element that was unanticipated, or he changes the narrative midway through or at 2/3 of the way through, something to that effect. Every one of his films has something that's taken from this, where he was at his lowest budget level, but probably his most successful by comparison film. Like, it's not his most financially successful. He's had huge movies. Oppenheimer made almost $1 billion. But by notoriety, I think this is the thing that obviously puts him on a different level and gives him opportunities that he wasn't otherwise going to have. Insomnia worked to basically address some of the concerns with, can you work with a bigger budget? Can you work with bigger movie stars? Can you make an effective movie? But those were more to address the concerns of him moving from small budget indie director, which we've had a few of, to can you make a big budget blockbuster film that still uses all of these elements and makes it really effective. And by the time we get to Batman Begins, obviously we've had that all within this soup. But I think viewing this film is very important for any Christopher Nolan fan to understanding the rest of everything else. Because you cannot view Tenet without foreseeing this film almost.
100%. I mean, I noted as the black and white and the color, the whole playing with time, the playing with memory or changing memory, perception, what you perceive to be true or what not to be true, massive in this, but also featured in other films. The dead wife, I'm sorry. It's comes
the
up.
Unreliable protagonist is a significant portion of this.
Absolutely. What have I got here? Yeah, sort of men trying to fix a problem.
Okay, I guess I hadn't thought about that one, but yeah. All right.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, look at Oppenheimer. And look at the world we're living in. Oh, dear. Anyway.
So what problem is being solved in the Odyssey?
How to get home.
Okay. I guess.
But is Anne Hathaway going to die? Oh.
Well, you don't know what kind of twist Nolan's going to put on the Odyssey.
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to really do it like as it's written, or is he going to put some sort of a twist in it?
Well, it's definitely going to be in different time frames. So we're definitely going to have, throwbacks to like before or after. And when he's going to put in the Trojan horse, that could be at the end. Maybe he's going to do it backwards.
So
let's just put it this way.
We'll take two of his more successful recent films that are historically based, because to a degree, The Odyssey is probably the most important Western canon story that we have, other than the Bible. So with that element, you could go the Dunkirk route, where he didn't really change much. He just kind of told the story in these competing timelines that all of a sudden synced up at the end, which was his play with time. Or you could get closer to Oppenheimer, which did have kind of a twist to it because of how the characters interacted and such, but it was still historically based. I don't know how you do that because I haven't read The Odyssey. I kind of generally know a few things about it, but you never know. I'm still going to be in the theater.
That's the thing. You could put down... I would love to see a man on the street thing where they just say, well, Christopher Nolan is releasing a movie called The Odyssey, and it's based upon Homer's The Odyssey. Can you tell us anything about it? Well, it's Greek.
I don't know if you'd get that far.
Yeah. Everybody's heard of it, but nobody knows what it is.
It's because they know the word Odyssey. That's probably it.
Yeah.
But they couldn't tell you the story.
All right, so I did allude to earlier that Memento was my number 9 at the time. It has now moved up, or excuse me, my number 10. There's 12 films, so my apologies. My math was incorrect. It has moved up 2 spots right now to number 8, and I did readjust the order. I think my top 6 is pretty well locked in, but it currently is Oppenheimer, Dunkirk, Dark Knight, Interstellar, Inception, Batman Begins. I think that's pretty locked in. I have The Prestige at 7, only because, and I know some people hold it very dearly, but that film is not as good when you know the twist, in my opinion. It's you almost have to forget it, but the problem is you kind of know it the entire time now, and so it just kind of ruins it a little bit. I have Memento at 8, Following at 9, Rises at 10, Insomnia and Tenet at 11 and 12, where they are likely to stay. Let's just be fair.
Yeah. I have to rewatch Dunkirk before The Odyssey. It's the next one that I have to really rewatch because I feel this is one that I have lower than I would expect for me. Generally, I have it somewhere like 7, which feels wrong. So yeah, I saw Interstellar again, and I saw it on the big screen like for its anniversary, like about a year ago, and it went up like 2 or 3 spots as well. So I think Dunkirk needs to have that treatment. Although I did see Dunkirk in theaters when it came out, so it's not the big screen versus the small screen experience. Whereas Interstellar, the only thing I'd only seen it in a plane. So I don't think that kind of is not quite how Sir Chris intended. So but yeah, I need to watch. So I need to watch Dunkirk, and then I need to redo my rankings. But yeah, currently I have Prestige, Inception, Oppenheimer's top 3, and then it all starts getting a bit hazy.
Which is good because you're going to be back on with us in November for the Prestige. So there you go.
Yes, it's my Letterboxd top 4.
Dunkirk to me is the film where I say there's the biggest gap between watching it in like a true IMAX setting with the sound really deafening compared to watching it even on like a normal theater screen. So there's just something for me in watching that the first time in an IMAX setting with the sound deafening and all of the war elements around me that was suffocating and just almost an emotional stress experience that I don't think I could have gotten in any other way. And so then when they're on the train at the end and he's reading Churchill's speech, like you feel this sense of relief that I didn't get when I watched it again with my dad in his regular rural theater there. And I certainly didn't get when I've rewatched it at home or even on a phone. Most of the time, the format doesn't change that much for me. That is one of the lone exceptions where I would say seeing it in an IMAX made a difference.
Well, I don't have one near me, so.
Yeah, but any major theater with a really good sound system, I think it would improve how you feel about that film because I think the film is supposed to be about those war elements that are felt as opposed to just simply seen.
Right. Yeah. I saw Dunkirk in theaters, as I said, but it wasn't the biggest screen and it wasn't the big Dolby in town center. And that's for my Interstellar rewatch. That's where I saw that. So, and that was like life-changing. So, yeah.
I'm trying to think. I've seen Begins, Inception, Rises, Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, Dunkirk, and Tenet all in theaters.
I've seen Following in theaters. They re-released it super mega randomly, like about a year ago, 15 months ago, I don't know. And I just happened to see it in the listings. I'm like, it can't be. Wait, there must be another, like, what? And I clicked on it. It was like, yeah, Christopher Nolan, 98 or whatever it was. I was like, okay. And then, I think there's some stupid, decent time, because it was still light when I came out again. It was something like midday or 1 p.m. on a Sunday, random Sunday. I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. So yeah, I've seen Following on the big screen. The only one I haven't seen the big screen, I think, is Insomnia.
Okay.
Oh no, I probably haven't seen Memento actually on the big screen, actually. Yeah, okay.
Dad, knowing that you haven't seen at least 3 of these, I'm pretty sure, Following, Insomnia, and Tenet, what would be your sample rankings here?
Oppenheimer, Dunkirk, probably, the 3 Batman films, and Dark Knight, then the original, then the third, then probably Interstellar.
And this one at the bottom?
Yeah. I understood it, and I got it, and I appreciate it, because it is creative, and it does have a lot to say, but it's just, I've seen it, and I'm just probably not going to rewatch it, because I really don't need to. I get what it's trying to do and trying to say.
I think that this is a movie much for me like Inception was, where multiple viewings actually helps the experience, because the more you understand and the more you relate to it, you see some of the storytelling craftsmanship. Yes, it is confusing initially to try and get into, and I'll be honest, I watched probably 20, 25 minutes of this one, and I just went back and restarted it. I'm like, I'm still a little bit lost here, because it really interjects you into the initial part of the film, and if you haven't seen it for a while, and I think I probably watched it 6 years ago. That sounds about right. It just takes you a little while to even remember, even though I knew all of that was coming.
The question I had when I was watching this film, and some of the words in the language, is if Nolan had read the piece that was issued by the American Psychiatric Association on memory, which is memory is not, you don't, you have an event in your life and it's stored in your brain, right? And you recall it as a memory. It doesn't go back to where it was. It's restored in a different portion of your brain. So what you have is a memory of a memory of a memory every time you bring it up, which is why it can change, whether consciously or subconsciously, because you only remember portions. It's like your internal telephone game where, you tell the person a story next to you and it changes just slightly. And so memories can be very spotty. They can be altered. They can be cleaned up.
Okay, I'm going to save this for when we get to the end for remaining questions, but I have something that undercuts the entire rules of the movie.
Ooh. Yeah.
That I don't know if anybody's technically considered.
Okay.
At least that I've seen.
Okay. All right. Teasing.
So, Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
Yes. Leonard Shelby, Guy Pearce, is a man driven by a single desperate purpose: to find and kill the man who raped and murdered his wife. However, his quest is complicated by a rare, untreatable form, and I'm going to get this wrong.
It's anterograde amnesia.
Anterograde amnesia. A result of the same attack which leaves him unable to store new memories for more than a few minutes. To navigate a world that constantly resets, Leonard relies on an intricate system of Polaroid photos, handwritten notes, and permanent tattoos etched across his body to track his progress and identify his allies and enemies. As the film unfolds in a unique, non-linear structure that mirrors Leonard's own disorientation, he must piece together the fragmented truth of his past while questioning the reliability of his own facts and the motives of those claiming to help him.
Thank you, Dad. So what is the film about? We've kind of gone over the plot structure, but what is it trying to say beyond that?
I think it's about identity and memory and how connected that is ultimately. Is your memory how you identify? Is your identity your memories as you remember them? Is that who you are? If you do not remember something, does that mean it didn't exist? And how you we alluded to it earlier, how you can maybe have the spotty memory or change the memory, and does that then change you ultimately? I think is what it's trying to say. And of course it's, a neo-noir thriller as well. But ultimately
yeah,
I think that's the bigger theme, is the one of the identity being inherently connected to your memory.
Well, and whether your own memory is reliable. I think to me that's the biggest takeaway I had from this viewing was, is anybody in this movie able to be trusted? Like, from his perspective, he's an unreliable narrator, which we find out at the very end is most distinctly true. He's basically created these narratives and these things for himself, and even one thing where he consciously decides he's going to change his system to intentionally lie to himself. He knows he's going to forget, and then the new version of himself that resets is going to change the complete complexion of how his identity and how he interacts in the world with different people. It changes everything about him. And to a degree, that's another form of inception, where he incepts himself by writing, "Do not believe his lies." So can we trust our own memories at a certain point as well?
And as they say at the end, you lie to yourself to be happy. Ultimately. Yeah. And we've all done that. We've all convinced ourselves that something else was true or different in order to either make ourselves happy, to have a happier memory, or to achieve something else for whatever. There's always a reason that we've done that.
That's why it's always interesting to go back to like a high school reunion and share stories, because it's amazing how stories will be embellished or altered, or people have different memories or concepts of what took place. The other aspect of this that I think is important is without memory, time does not have any meaning.
Well, and that's why I found maybe it was somewhat of a throwaway line at one point in the film, and we'll get to it during quotes, but without the ability to remember, do you have the ability to heal?
But I mean, when you start thinking, and I know this was a central concept in Einstein's work and covered by Walter Isaacson in his biography, which is the fourth dimension to Einstein was time, which is not a physical or physics-related concept as much as it's a human need to explain the world. And, without having memories, your ability to have time really loses its value.
It's always connected to something else so that you can place yourself in a particular part of time. It's never knowing straight off the bat, that happened in 2010 or whatever. It's because I know that happened in 2010 because at the same time this was happening, and that was definitely 2010 because, it's all connected. Or going back to what you remember and what's actually you've been told as well. Like my earliest memory, but it's not my memory, because people tell me that I cannot remember anything before the age of 3. This is, this has been studied that children before the age of like 2 or 3, they cannot maintain those memories. They're gone, which is so sad, but that's what they say. But my earliest memory that I will tell anybody, and it's just not true, is being on a train from Edinburgh down to London and having to get out of the train and walk when we arrived. And my mom put my shoes on the wrong feet, and I was still like a toddler, like, 2. I could walk well, but, you're sort of sleep drunk at 2, and I had them in the wrong feet, and I was wobbly and then can remember. I have been casting this up to her for many, many years, but do I know that memory? Is that not just something that people have told me that happened when I was 2? But I have this so clear memory. I'm like, no, I remember arriving in King's Cross Station in London and this. But no, do I? No, I don't think I do.
I have a memory that goes back before the age of 3 because I had fallen off. They used to have this little horse that had wheels, and you'd kind of scoot on it. And I fell off of it onto a door jamb where the door had been removed, so the thing, and I sliced my head. And my memory is laying on the table with the bright lights shining into my face and hearing the doctors talk about what they were going to do. Now, nobody's ever told me anything about that. I just remember those bright lights shining in my face. And I also remember times playing in the driveway. We moved in September of 1966, so I would have been 2.5. And I remember playing in going over to the neighbor elderly couple for milk and lemonade, or for cookies and lemonade. So I disagree that there is not some people that have those memories. But boy, that I would comment that I think memories are what is, in essence, the true heart of humanity. If you don't have memories, you lose so much of your human identity, which is one of the things that makes dementia and Alzheimer's so absolutely horrible.
Certainly, but also as an attorney and somebody who did a lot of witness examination as a defense attorney, memory is not reliable. I mean, we see this in something like a Rashomon, but we see this additionally here. How many times have you initially remembered a story, but you change one small detail or one characteristic because it makes the story better? And then that becomes what the story is. Like, you don't remember it, you remember your telling of that story in that fashion. And there are many things that you and I disagree on to the facts of what happened, and we just vehemently remember them differently because of the story that has been told from that moment on. So
if you put,
what do they say? It's like, tell a lie often enough, and it becomes your truth.
Okay, well, we don't need to bring up Trump quite so early in the pod.
Or Goebbels, which is where that came from. But you can do that. And I used to do that for Dyer to the jury, which is you can put 3 people into a room for 5 minutes and then come out and ask them to describe the room, and you're going to get completely different statements. And it's in large part because we look at life through the filters by which we have been nurtured. So, for me, I'm going to be looking at more stuff that's more concrete because that's what I do all day. And so I'm going to describe the table. I'm going to describe the paintings on the wall. Other people may describe some sort of a feeling or the lighting or whatever. It just differs.
Did you know? The limited edition DVD allows the movie to be watched in the exact chronological order of the events in the film. I do think there's actually a copy of this like on YouTube or something.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. The first couple of scenes of the regular cut of the movie appear normal in this version, meaning they are not reversed. However, this version of the movie on disc 2 is quite difficult to reach. The user must answer several questions and solve a puzzle, and forward, reverse, and chapter skip capabilities are disabled. Not on YouTube, of course.
Or on archive.org, my favorite.
Yes, that really works well for if you're doing like an older year
Yes.
of a particular
Yes.
show that you're associated with that we shall leave nameless by their request. So like when you're doing 1957 and you can't find a certain movie, 1942 was so enhanced by having archive.com or whatever it was, because I found so many of those old war propaganda films on there.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing
Propaganda.
I'm doing 1977, so it's been a godsend. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know? During Teddy's line, "You don't have a clue, you freak," director Sir Christopher Nolan felt that Joe Pantoliano, Teddy, did not quite nail the end of the line. So he decided to re-record the last two words to his liking, delivering them himself. Therefore, in the final film, the words, "you freak," as we hear them, are actually being said not by Pantoliano, but by Nolan impersonating Pantoliano's voice. Pantoliano was unaware of the dubbing until an interview later for the promotion of the film. So just a nice little Easter egg if you want to go back and watch that. Did you know? Stephen Tobolowsky has stated that during his audition for Sammy, he had mentioned to Sir Christopher Nolan that he had experienced amnesia personally. A few years earlier, he was given an experimental painkiller that induced amnesia for a surgery he had undergone. Tobolowsky said it may have helped him get the part because no other actor would likely have had such first-hand experience.
Yeah. I read that.
And did you know? Originally, the entire Sammy Jenkins story was told in one scene. However, Christopher Nolan felt the story and the Sammy Jenkins character was so important that it needed to be spread out over the course of the film's middle section.
I think it's a good choice. Yeah.
I think by giving you bits and pieces, it actually makes it a little bit more effective.
I agree.
And so you're waiting for kind of the payoff of that entire portion of the movie, here or there.
Yeah, and you're kind of wondering, why is he showing this? What's going to happen leading up to then what does happen, and then what happens then at the end, and what the reveal from Teddy is.
Yeah. Did you know? Christopher Nolan addresses the question some people have about how long Lenny can keep hold of certain memories. Quote, "He can keep things in mind so long as he pays attention. So depending on how much is being thrown at him, that time span can vary." Nolan also states that throughout the middle of the film, while numerous things are happening, Lenny's memory gets shorter and shorter. So if you do pay attention, there are gaps in the length of his resets.
Yes, and that the last scene, which is the first scene, chronologically, that's so long. That compared to everything else. So, yeah, that backs that up.
Basically, the more he interacts with somebody, the shorter it will be. So it's to me, the way it's described is how many new stimuli and different things can I have the capacity for before it starts being transferred into short-term memory. And so the more things that are brought in, the shorter that time frame is going to be because the bank is going to fill up that much quicker.
Yeah, which explains the whole kind of point with Natalie where she's throwing all this crap at him and how she's able to then literally 10 seconds, she goes, she comes back, it's gone.
Right. Now, I did want to say, and in relation to Dad's comment earlier about the AMA, I think I did see either it was some type of medical journal or it might have been the AMA themselves. They said this is the most accurate description or depiction of anterograde amnesia that they've had on film. So they're very complimentary of his ability in this film, or the writing itself, I suppose. Did you know? If you pay attention, the camera is always a little closer to Lenny than it is to the person he is speaking with. This is another way of getting the audience into Lenny's head without it using first-person shots. So just another thing to look at or think about as you're watching it the next time. Unless you're Dad, apparently.
Unless you're Dana.
Fair enough. Anyway, that looks like a good spot for our first break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 306th episode, we welcome back 5-time club member and CLP contributor Peterson W. Hill to revisit the Best Picture winner of 1991, The Silence of the Lambs, celebrating its 35th anniversary this year. Directed by Jonathan Demme, written by Ted Talley, cinematography by Tak Fujimoto, music by Howard Shore, editing by Craig McKay, starring Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, Scott Glenn, and Ted Levine. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. All right. Before we move too much further, Heather, what's going on with you? What are you working on, and where can people find you?
Okay, well, I've been busy. I've just finished Oscars and awards season, so lots going on there. Like prediction episodes and review episodes and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so moving on. Last season is done.
So, so not appearing on this episode kept you really busy? I'm shocked. Utterly shocked.
Well, it was my own fault, quite frankly, because I came up with ideas. I was like, hey, we could do this and we could do that, and then we could do that. So, yeah, it's my own fault. Yeah, so there's loads of award stuff out there, and we've also done on the Revisions Almanac, sorry, I had to mention it because that's where the content is. We just recently released in the last couple of days our Ryan Gosling Mount Rushmore, which was complete chaos. And we shout at Andrew a lot, Amanda and I, which I think is fair. We did a much more harmonious Christian Bale Mount Rushmore, and monthly recap coming up as well. And then we've got next month, I don't even know what we've got. What have we got? Oh, we've got, for the release of the drama, we're doing something about Zendaya and Rob Pattinson. I have no idea what. For Devil Wears Prada, we're doing Meryl Streep something. And we're doing music biopics, bad music biopics, which kind of sounds like like tautology, but we're doing a bad music biopics draft. So that'll be fun.
Okay, so yes. I have to ask. All right.
Yes.
The new version of the show that must not be named has changed tone, tenor, and format outside of the main show, but it has so much other content that is beyond what it was originally conceptualized. What is this channel anymore?
I don't know. Ask him if he wants to change the name. I don't know.
Or
I have no say.
Make different shows with different branding. Those of us in the ether are a little bit confused as to what's going on when you're putting out something almost daily.
There's a lot out there. Yeah. And then there was all the interviews as well, like during award season. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just work in marketing and branding, but this is not my show. This is not my podcast. So go and have words with him.
It should be renamed the Corn-Fed White Boys or something more generic, so it could be all encompassing.
Content whores. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
That one make a great clip.
There you go.
That is definitely staying in. Okay.
Yeah. Well, along with the clips where I always say Andrew loves Nazis. Oh, every single episode now I have to try and get it in. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Dad, we left off at best performance. Who did you have down?
I had Nolan, if anything more than just the directing, let alone the writing.
Yeah. I think it's so much conceptually his film, and I think there's a reason that, and I'll definitely address this later on, but he's the only one that really gets any sort of boost out of this film. Like, it does not do anything for anybody else in this movie's career, unless they're tied to, like, the production and the technicality. Like, Wally Pfister goes on to do a bunch of movies because he's connected to Christopher Nolan. But, like, Jonathan Nolan kind of gets a little bit of a boost in connection to Christopher Nolan. He's the one that ends up being the star because of this movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's his movie. He's, of course, the best performer.
Yeah. Then this, as you said earlier, we talked about, this is, it's like the skeleton key to his oeuvre, to get the word in. Yes.
Oh, somebody else.
Oof.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you did include it in the notes, so
I did, and I was
spotted
meaning
it.
to use it earlier, but we didn't get there.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
It's oof.
Yeah, it's Nolan. Yeah.
yeah, you trying to give us French lessons is saying something there, Pop. Okay, anyway. Best secondary performance, I think, is going to be a much, well, maybe more heated or controversial take. I personally have Guy Pearce here. For the first half of the film, I wasn't exactly sold on his performance. But the later on that you get into the film, I think he's moving between various different, like almost per reset, he's reacting completely differently and in a completely different emotional state. Especially noted during like the multiple different Natalie interactions that he has during the middle of the film. It feels like he's happy-go-lucky in one, then he's overly concerned in another, and he's sympathetic, and in another one he's angry and irate. So I think he's had a lot to do during the course of the film, and because it is so much with the camera being on him basically at all times, it is a vehicle for him. I think somewhat by default it was always going to be him as secondary, but that's where I ended up going.
I went there also, and in large part because of his ability to convey in fleeting moments throughout the film confusion. Because you could see it on his face and his eyes when he is not sure. And he didn't like make it linger so that it was so obvious. So that in and of itself. But for the most part, you could have inserted good-looking, beefy actor, B in this role, and it would have probably worked.
So
I don't know about that because there's one specific thing. You said his ability to forget or be misunderstood. Like there's a part of the brain that I feel like when you've had a conversation for the first time, you can't necessarily turn off that you know people and their reactions. And so for every time that he has to recreate or reset, I feel like that's something that you need at least a decently talented actor. You can't put Dwayne Johnson in this role and it'd be the same thing.
Okay.
Well, you need somebody attractive, I think. But, I heard that originally there was the wish to have Brad Pitt in this role.
I think that would have made sense based on Seven, yeah.
And he was connected to it for a while. And the reason he ultimately didn't do it is because he wanted to kind of distance himself from something that he felt was kind of similar, certain aspects to it, to Fight Club.
Okay, sure.
Which I understand, and we're not going to talk about Fight Club because obviously that's,
that's against the rules.
It's against the rules.
I try to avoid talking about Fight Club.
Yeah, well, a notorious episode. Yes.
Yeah, who was on that episode? I can't remember.
I have no idea.
Names.
I've forgotten. But also, Charlie Sheen apparently was considered.
Okay. That would have been
That would not have worked.
No. Although, no, it wouldn't have worked. But I think the reason, and I've also got Guy Pearce, by the way, is that he is charismatic, but he's also got this kind of mysteriousness to him. Like he's not quite tangible. You can't quite say. You need him to be able to do that and to be able to deliver the slightly funny lines, for want of a better word. He needs to be able to bring that as well. So yeah, I just think he does a great job. And he is literally carrying you through this movie. It's like, I don't know if you saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Yes.
It's more, obviously she's doing it much more extreme than he is, but it's a similar kind of thing. The camera is very close to her, and if she's not emoting correctly, or correctly, right? I mean, what is correctly? But if she's not doing her job to the best of her abilities and 100% and firing over 100%, it's not going to work. And it's the same with him here, because it's so close and it's following his face. So it has to what you were saying as well, he has to be able to show these emotions, the confusion, everything that he has experienced in real time, and it has to be believable. And he has to kind of be somebody that you're rooting for.
Yeah.
as well.
Like, Dad, don't get me wrong, and I take your point somewhat. I think there were better choices for this role. Like, I don't think Guy Pearce is the only person I could see do this role. For example, every time he's confused, he has kind of this blank stare, expressionless face, whereas I kind of prefer sometimes the people who kind of scrunch up. So, for example, like Christian Bale, when he's confused, he's just kind of got this scrunch face that is... And you see it in, like, American Psycho. Like, I think he would have actually been better in this role. But that's not to say that you can literally do anybody, or that Guy Pearce didn't do a difficult job and do it at least effectively for the purposes of this movie. Even if I think there were other people who could have been better.
Don't get me wrong, not anybody. I mean, Wally Shawn would not have been a good choice.
Gilbert Gottfried. I also think, we just go down a very rabbit hole here for some of that.
Recasting. Bad recasts.
Danny DeVito.
Oh, God. He could have done the Joey Pants role.
And he has. Like, that's kind of his character in, like, The Rainmaker, for example. You know, it's kind of that sidekick type of guy. But, yeah. All right. Finally, most charismatic. I had the music. The music annoyed me for about half the film. Like, I thought it didn't fit. I thought it was eerie for unknown reasons. But when you start to get that descending action where the pace really picks up and things are just more quickly happening, Lenny resets more often, I think the score actually does complement the film very well. And so from about the halfway point to the end, maybe the last hour, 50 minutes to an hour, I would say that I really enjoyed the score here.
Would you like to go?
I love the editing. Although you could connect that to Nolan, I guess, in a way. But I do want to recognize the editing here because it got the nomination at the Academy Awards. And, sorry, what was the name of the editor? Wait, it was with two
Dodie
D's.
Dom.
I wrote it down. Dodie Dom. And again, also to Guy Pearce or to Christopher Nolan, if they're not at the top of their game, this is not going to work. And the same with the editing. It works because of the cuts, and it works because of how well it is edited together. And then that fade where the two timelines come together and the color and the black and white come together and it all becomes color. If he's not doing a good job editing correctly, and I'm sure it is obviously Nolan's direction as well, but I just want to call out the editing, and it's not going to work. That's and I'm pleased it was recognized for a fairly small film that got into that, you know, kind of quite prestigious category.
Well, for me, I'm going to go in a completely different direction. I'm going to give it to Stephen Tobolowsky.
Oh, of course you were.
Because how else, I mean, any scene, a balding, pudgy, kind of dorky-looking guy can, by just his sheer acting ability, seem to take over any scene he's in.
I mean, did he really take over every scene he was in? He was just kind of like a drooling buffoon.
You were drawn to him, though.
I'm not sure about that. I don't... Like, normally I would agree with you. Like, he's got a very distinct charisma, kind of like... Oh, why am I drawing a blank? You just sent me a video on him. He's Clooney's best friend.
Oh,
he played
yes.
Bing Bong in Inside Out, and I can't think of his name. But Richard Kind. Yeah, Richard Kind. Like, Stephen Tobolowsky, certain character actors, like Richard Kind and Stephen Tobolowsky, like, you're immediately noticing of them. It's kind of the same J.K. Simmons effect. Although J.K. Simmons, now that he has the Oscar and he has that one role, like, transcends a bit of it. But it's those people that, like, they're very much that guys, except for people in the industry like ourselves somewhat that are, like, much deeper into this stuff. But they have a very distinct look, feel, and when they show up, you kind of know what part they're going to do.
They're like interchangeable character actors, ultimately.
This is a different role for Stephen Tobolowsky, to be noted. But I don't think it was necessarily, like, unless it's Dad, where it's like, oh, Stephen Tobolowsky's in this? And I think that's why you were drawn to that character, as opposed to, like, honestly, I'm drawn more to the wife because the camera is on her, is focusing on her being the revolution of the action.
You mean it's Fraser's agent?
Yes, BB.
BB.
That's a reference to the American sitcom Frasier.
Yes.
Yes.
That I realized.
Yes, if you want to see his Tobolowsky's range, just watch Mississippi Burning and then turn around and watch a Groundhog Day.
Needle nose Ned the head. How are you, buddy?
He leads the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi Burning. Completely different roles.
Okay. Although I have to say the whole cast is actually really pretty good. It was quite hard. I mean, I've gone with, 2 from the crew for mine, but I mean, I could easily have said Joey Pants or Carrie Ann Moss. I mean, also great. So,
well, that's the question. Is I don't know what else was nominated that year or what other films, but would this have gotten a potential wink for best casting?
Well, thank you for vamping here for a moment for me, because I just wanted to check to make sure in the note of reliability of memory. I haven't seen Mississippi Burning in quite some time. I was just making sure Stephen Tobolowsky was in the film in case I had to edit
it's
that
just
later.
a memory that you've told yourself. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are so many famous movies about KKK Klansmen that Stephen Tobolowsky could have very easily fit in.
There's the famous scene where he's like in the barber shop and Gene Hackman's sitting there kind of playing it off because he's from the South in the film. And that's the scene that I remember. He was just a horrendous human being.
Okay, well, I mean, like, is it easier to say, as far as cinematic villains, like, if the Nazis are number one as, like, easy villains to put in your movie and immediately know, like, you don't have to show, just show up with the swastika, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, this is the bad guy. Of course it's the bad guy. Of course. But if you needed a number 2, it's probably the Klan.
Except that you don't have, or you can overplay it so much. That's the thing. I mean, that was what made Christopher Waltz's character in
Christoph
Waltz's character so, absolutely terrifying was he acted normal. He didn't play it for evil. He
And
just
he was so
played the part.
charismatic.
And it just came off as being evil because of what he was representing.
Well, we're going off on a tangent, so let's go to best scene here.
I mean, I would argue shooting through the floorboards would also tell you what kind of a person he was, but,
Yeah. Let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. Killing John G., so basically the opening moments of the film. Then Remember Sammy Jankis, which I know that is a distinct line reading and that refers to a specific set of resets. However, in this capacity, I'm seeing more of the combined scenes of the storytelling of Sammy Jankis as opposed to that one particular scene. So I wanted to make sure that we noted who that is. Who is Dodd, which kind of combines in my mind all of the scenes at Natalie's house so that we can kind of squash that together. And then Stay Off the Phone, which is him referring to the newest tattoo on his arm. And finally, John G., which is the ending of the film. Did you guys have any other ones to add? I know there are so many smaller scenes to this because of the cuts and the transitioning back and forth. It's hard to, unless you combine scenes, it's hard to like individually say one or the other because they all kind of fit.
Yeah, I struggled. I did make a note of, because I wasn't quite sure what you were meaning, but now you've explained it. I know what you mean. So I made a note of in Natalie's house where she starts planting the seeds of what, her part of the manipulation. But I think you've got that covered because you were basically saying everything in Natalie's house. And then, the ultimate reveal and kind of showdown between Teddy and Leonard, where, he talks about the insulin and the diabetes, and then he drives off. Yeah.
Right. So, all right, if we have no further nominees, what is the best scene from these 5?
I think it's the last one.
I think it's the reveal because everything's leading up to that. Like there are smaller reveals like Natalie not being a caring individual, which you've led up to that point, but Yeah. So I think it's the end and the payoff.
Does everything lead up to the reveal, or does in fact everything lead off from the reveal?
Well, I haven't watched it the reverse order, so I'll let you know when I go to YouTube and
because the reveal is
pull that
actually
up.
the first scene, yeah, officially, yeah. If you do it chronologically,
Fair enough. All right. Any disagreement on that being the best scene, Dad? Okay, then moving to favorite scene though, I have Stay Off the Phone because at that point in the action, it's like almost a record scratching. It feels so. You've seen this guy literally be on the phone, even though he says, I never take phone calls. I'm better with people face to face, everything else. So you're kind of in the back of your mind thinking, why is he disobeying his own rule? And there's just kind of this back and forth. Then you get the letter or the note under the door. Is Teddy the cop he's been talking to the whole time? How reliable is Teddy? I think a lot of that undermines even the ending and how you view the ending. Because I wonder how many people are actually reliable in this entire story. Or do they have an angle manipulating a unreliable protagonist? So to me, that was the most... The reason why it's my favorite is it's the scene by which I was the most invested. Or felt the most invested.
For me, my most favorite scene was Remember Sammy Jenkins. And specifically one part of that film. Or the combination of scenes. It's the very end where it's the tip-off. Tobolowsky sitting in the mental ward. And at the very end, as a doctor walks by, there's just a flash that it's not Tobolowsky, but it's Guy Pearce. And that in and of itself then tells you that he has conflated that story with his own story.
yeah, my favorite I think is the last one, and then specifically actually where the two, well, just before the kind of the very final one, is where the two timelines meet, because I mentioned the editing and I mentioned that all coming together. So I think that's the one that I really, stands out for me, where it all kind of starts coming into place.
I will say that the final scene is my most indelible because it is the most stark thing that you remember about the movie going back to it. Like, there were a lot of things in the middle that I didn't remember or recall at all. I remembered the heel turn for Natalie, and I remembered the ending. Those were the two distinct things that I remembered about the movie, revisiting after it a number of years. So the ending to me, because it is so stark and it's this revelation of sorts as to he's even lying to himself, that I think it makes it the most indelible. But yeah.
For my most indelible, this watch, because I kind of agree with you that I had the same memory going into it. That and the Sammy Jenkins stuff, I also remembered that very, very clearly. I would say from this rewatch, the thing that really jumped out at me is the Natalie kind of turning and the provoking scene, that scene, because it is just really hard to watch. I mean, there's some horrible words that she's saying and horrible things that she's saying to him to provoke that reaction. So that jumped out, like, straight out at me this time around.
Yeah, that one scene is so starkly different. Even the scene in the bar where they're spitting into the beer.
Ooh, oh yeah,
like,
okay,
even
yeah,
that is starkly different because she gets much more aggressive in his face, and the language used, the rest of it, it evokes a certain response even among the audience as to who this character is, compared to everything we're led to believe up until that point.
My most indelible is the John G., the disclosure. So,
all right. So that takes us to the end of our second section. That looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 276 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, we're going to skip In Memoriam this week, even though we do recognize here We'll talk about Chuck Norris next week when we get to it. I think there's a lot to be said in a more joking fashion, especially since I did not consume much entertainment that Chuck Norris was ever in. But we'll move on from that because we're pre-recording, or we're recording this a little earlier given our guests' time difference from us. But that takes us then to best, funniest lines. I will start with the first one myself. Leonard Shelby, we all lie to ourselves to be happy.
Okay, well, I'll follow that up with very similar. Teddy, you lie to yourself to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Leonard Shelby, I have to believe in a world outside my mind. I have to believe that my actions still have meaning, even if I can't remember them. I have to believe that when my eyes are closed, the world is still there. Do I believe the world's there? Is it still out there? Yeah, we all need mirrors to remind ourselves who we are. I'm no different.
Leonard Shelby, remember Sammy Jenkins?
Leonard, oh, I'm chasing this guy. No, he's chasing me.
Leonard Shelby, I don't even know how long she's been gone. It's like I've woken up in bed and she's not there because she's gone to the bathroom or something. But somehow I know she's never going to come back to bed. If I could just reach over and touch her side of the bed, I would know that it was cold, but I can't. I know I can't have her back, but I don't want to wake up in the morning thinking she's still here. I lie here not knowing how long I've been alone. So how can I heal? How am I supposed to heal if I can't feel time?
Leonard Shelby, I have this condition.
Natalie, you mix your laundry list with your grocery list, you'll end up eating your underwear for breakfast.
I'm out.
Okay, as he's pouring for himself.
Yeah.
Okay, Leonard Shelby, I'm not a killer. I'm just someone who wanted to make things right. Can't I just let myself forget what you've told me? Can't I just let myself forget what you've made me do? You think I just want another puzzle to solve? Another John G. to look for? You're John G., so you can be my John G. Will I lie to myself to be happy? In your case, Teddy, yes, I will.
Teddy, you don't want the truth, you make up your own truth.
Leonard Shelby, memory can change the shape of a room. It can change the color of a car, and memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation. They're not a record, and they're irrelevant if you have the facts.
Leonard, if we can't make memories, we can't heal.
Teddy, you know, I've had more rewarding friendships than this one, although I do get to keep telling the same jokes.
I'm out.
Okay, then I have the last one, and I saved this right for the end. Leonard Shelby. Now, where was I?
Well played. Very good.
All right, so that takes us to the Stanley Rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film, approximately 5 years after it came out to today. So roughly 2006 to today, what is the legacy of the film as shared between two equal yet separate groups, the industry and the audience, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go first. For the industry on legacy. The industry, it's Christopher Nolan. That's who got it. That's whose career was advanced. That's who really was propelled forward. And considering the impact he's had and the rise over the last 20 years, 4.5. I can't go any higher than that because there was a couple films after this before he hit his peak with the Dark Knight. But for the public, most people, I don't think even are aware of this unless you're a very big Nolan fan and a cinephile. So I'm at a 2 for the public. So I'm at a 6.5 overall.
I similarly have a 4.5 for the industry, but it's more from the standpoint that Christopher Nolan and people directly connected on a technical aspect to how he makes his movies were the only ones really boosted or promoted from this film. Guy Pearce had this period where he just kind of like fell out of favor for a long period of time. Like he came and went through individual films, but he didn't seem to be in major blockbusters the way that we thought he would be in the late 90s, coming off of like LA Confidential and such. And Carrie-Anne Moss had a long period away, save for the Matrix films. Joe Pantoliano, this was probably near the end of his major that guy run, where he would show up and stuff regularly, but nobody else in this film. I mean, the desk clerk at the hotel does show up in Batman Begins, and I think he's in like one other Christopher Nolan film. But like that has more to do with, I think, being in a Nolan film. Outside of that, nobody else seemed to be promoted in the same way that Chris Nolan was from this film. So I only have that at a 4.5. However, I do have it slightly higher on the public, only from the standpoint as I've been consistent that a 3 to me is almost all of the, let's say, cinephile community has seen it. I think anybody in our community, our group, with maybe a few small minor exceptions, like 95% have seen this movie. It's one of those modern indie kind of classics that I think a lot of people in the cinephile world have seen. The general public, I would agree with you, but that puts it to me at a 3, so I'm at a 7.5.
Okay. On the industry, I actually marked it a little bit further down than you have because, it is literally just Nolan and Pfister and a few others, whose careers have, still out there. Nothing against Guy Pearce. He got the Oscar nomination overdue, as well, for The Brutalist. So, but what else has he been doing? He's been very, very busy. But I think at the time he'd had LA Confidential then he had this, and it was like, oh, this guy is going to be somebody. And I feel that it didn't quite reach that potential that we saw back then. So, and same as you already said with Carrie-Anne Moss, it's like, well, apart from Matrix, yeah, she'd had the Matrix, and then she had this, so similar, to Guy Pearce. And yeah, but obviously, Nolan alone is the 5 points. Anyway, I've given it a 4, just Nolan alone, and Wally Pfister.
The biggest film after this Pearce did was The Hurt Locker, and he even was overshadowed by Jeremy Renner.
And he was in The King's Speech.
Correct,
as
but
well.
it was a bit part playing King Edward.
Yeah, I mean, that's just suddenly occurred to me now, just because, there was something else. And, I know we have experts in our community on Guy Pearce, a friend of the show, but yeah.
Well,
sorry.
I mean, I know neither of you is a big, like, Marvel person, but he was in Iron Man 3 as the villain of that. But again, that's okay. That period from about, because The Hurt Locker's 2009, the King's Speech is 2010, Iron Man 3 is 2013. So there's like a small period where he kind of came back. But even then,
it's just not the potential I think that we all expected back then. That's kind of what I mean. Anyway, as I say, Christopher Nolan makes up for all of that. So yeah, I gave it a 4. I'm a bit higher on the public just because I did a little bit of a poll with people that I know who are not in our community. Or cinephile community, of course, everybody has
So
seen
you
it
did
and
your
liked it.
own office poll?
I did my remote office poll, and my voice of the general public, my husband. I said, "Do you know Memento?" And he went, "Sorry, what? Memento or Memento? What are you saying?" And I said, okay, whatever. He does not remember names of films because he admits this. So I described it to him, and he's like, oh, yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar. You could see his memory was a bit hazy. So is he really remembering it? We do not know. But no, he's definitely seen
Did you marry my wife?
We did discuss this a little bit, Sunshine, that there's definitely similarities. He knows he's seen something maybe, but can't remember any actors in it, doesn't know the name of them, just like, oh, that guy. But you know what he's really good at? Recognizing voices. Like, he'll hear a dubbed voice, and he's like, that is Tom Cruise's voice.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, really? Okay. And I have to go and look up that this voice actor in some other random film that he's watching, I have to go and check that it's the same actor who does, like, Tom Cruise's voice or something. And of course it is. He's brilliant at it. Like, but...
Dana and I have been playing a very similar game with commercial voiceovers for 20 years.
Right, there you go. Everybody's going to have a superpower. That's his. So there we go. Anyway, back. The point is that a lot of people had heard of it, at least thought they might have seen it the day. And there's a lot of people out there who, because of the Oppenheimer, the Dark Knight, all this stuff, they're like, well, what else has Christopher Nolan done? They know Christopher Nolan, and it's not a massive filmography. It is not, and especially if you can say that most people have probably been along for the ride since the Dark Knight trilogy, maybe. It's not a heavy lift to go and revisit the others. So I've actually got it at 4 for the public in the 5+ years since release, as far after release. So I'm at 8.
So that's a 7.33 average between the three of us. I will say, in just another small anecdote, the most annoying that Dana ever gets in a movie theater is when we go to a Pixar film that he hasn't looked up the cast list before. And so, that's so-and-so. Yeah, okay, that's so-and-so. Oh, God, Dad. Just wait until the end of the movie and the cast list is out. We can all see it later. I don't need you to identify everyone when they first pop up.
So like the Leonardo DiCaprio just going...
Something like that, yeah. Anyway, moving to impact and significance. Similar to our legacy scoring, this is a measure of the impact and significance among the same two groups, the industry and the audience. However, this is for the initial 5 years after release, so 2001 to roughly 2006. What is the impact and significance of this film as shared between those two groups? Since, Dad, you led off the last category, I shall go first here. I can see an argument anywhere between a 4 and a 5 on this. I'm a little bit split of two minds on this. One, it does get 2 different Oscar nominations that, for a small film that finishes 86th at the worldwide box office in the early 2000s. And mind you, the films that were being nominated at this point in time were much bigger budget films, much more commercial. I mean, we had Saving Private Ryan, and we had Gladiator, and we had the Lord of the Rings films, and we had Chicago, and stuff that people were seeing. These weren't the films of the current moment where it's 96th at the current box office is getting you a Best Picture nomination, and none of the current crop outside of F1 were inside the top 22 of the year. So I'm a little bit of the two minds, in addition to the fact that Christopher Nolan, within 5 years, has directed 3 different major movies: Insomnia, Batman Begins, and The Prestige, and he goes on this monumental run where he by himself is an institution. Any movie he opens is almost guaranteed to get you $1 billion at this point in time. Minimally, I would say, because Dunkirk, I think, might have been the non-COVID related, because Tenet has that asterisk next to it for opening during COVID. Dunkirk is probably the lowest finishing movie that he's had of the last 2 decades, and that, I think, got to $700 million.
It was still
worldwide.
over $500 million, for sure. Yeah.
So even that still came with it a certain level of gravitas, and I would expect The Odyssey to make well over $1 billion based on the advanced ticket sales and the word of mouth and all the other excitement that's going to come out. Every time he opens a movie, it's a big deal because it's him on the poster. You could literally just say, Christopher Nolan film, and then in small lettering at the bottom, The Odyssey, and people would go see it. Because that's the marketing.
People were going to go and see that weird helicopter thing that The Odyssey was rumored to be, like the remake of something. And everyone's like, well, this sounds really weird, but it's Christopher Nolan, so I'm going to go and see it, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, same. Like,
So I could be persuaded. I currently have this at a 4 because it didn't get major awards attention. So that kind of takes it down a half point, probably closer to a 4.5. And again, Nolan's the only one that seems to have any level of boost, but it's like a rocket fuel boost. So I don't know. I could be monkeyed around. The audience on this one, I gave it a very conservative, although you could say that it's also maybe a little liberal, 2.5, because it's the 86th finishing film of that particular year, and this was a critic's film. It was not necessarily a public-driven film. So I have a 6.5 for right now.
I have 4.5 for the industry because of the, again, Nolan and the 2 Academy Award nominations. And I have a 2.5 also for the public because it did seem, and I think that there was a little bit of a kick, probably from what I could tell. Wasn't able to find the specific numbers, but the video or the DVD rentals and such, probably as people started watching some of his other films, they went back and watched that.
But was it within the 5 years?
Within that 5 years. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know.
Well, I'm at a 2.5, so if you criticize my number, you have to criticize your own.
I am at, for the industry, of 4.5 for the reasons that you've all said. Nolan's career, this takes him to Batman and the trilogy and everything that happens afterwards, and he's having success in those 5 years. Also, the 2 Academy Awards. I know you're saying only 2 Academy Awards. This was a tiny film. This was a tiny, tiny film, and because of the word of mouth, it's... I think the buzz mainly came out of Sundance, although it opened... So this is the thing. This straggles 2 years, but... So it's very confusing when you think about the award seasons. But it had this big word of mouth coming out of Sundance. It got into, I think, adapted or was it original? It got into screenplay.
It got into original because even though it was technically adapting a short story, the reason for it is that the short story was not published till after the movie came out.
Got it. Because I know there's the whole thing with Whiplash, because that was also based on a kind of a mini preview film, and people were like, well, it's still original because it was still the same thing, but it was adapted. Anyway, okay, so it was original, which is always the cool place. That's the cool category at the Academy Awards. But editing, again, you already mentioned it. It's the kind of the period of these big films, and this little film still manages to squeak into the very prestigious editing category. So anyway, I have 4.5 for the industry. Public, really hard, because to go back then, I know I watched it within the first 5 years of release, and this is before I became the Nolan head that I am now. In fact, I remember watching it and not knowing who Christopher Nolan was, so I must have watched it before the Batman stuff. Yeah, and a lot of people did, but they definitely didn't associate it with Christopher Nolan. So if you caught it, it was more because word of mouth, this is kind of cool. And it did, it opened very slowly in very limited release, and it still made those numbers. So I think that's not to be written off. So, yeah, I don't know. I am between a 3 and a 3.5. I think I'm going to say a 3.5. Because I'm thinking about the whole 5 years. And I think there were certainly people who did, in those 5 years, he was announced as a director for Batman, did start rediscovering his other films. So that's 8.
I think I do need to move it up to a 4.5 on the industry. So that's going to take me to a 7, and then the category will be the same as the last one. It'll be a 7.33 average between the three of us. All right, then we move to novelty. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the movie for 5 points, and the execution on anything in the movie for an additional 5 points, total of 10. I'll start here by just saying 10. It is a unique film. It is talking about a subject that really nobody else does. The nonlinear storytelling, you could say that there are other things that we're doing, but it wasn't quite this experimental, save for, let's say, like a Pulp Fiction, but even that was doing it in a different style. The notability with the time jumps and the rest of it. And as far as execution, I'd be willing to entertain that, because I said earlier that there are other people I could see doing a better job than Guy Pearce in the movie, that maybe I can move down a half point there. But as far as the technical, I already complimented the score. We've complimented the editing. We've complimented the writing on this. I don't think any of us has an issue with the direction. And all of the character actor parts are, with the very few of them that there are in this film, even Thomas Lennon, who's obviously gone on to multiple other things, are fairly good to pretty great. So with that one lone caveat, I would say that it's a 5 on execution as well, so that brings me to a 10.
Ditto.
Okay.
This is so weird that I'm the one that's going to have more of a caveat. I think I will still land on a 10, but I would have said...
You think you will?
I think I don't know. I'm going to talk first of all and then see where I land. Because you also had a caveat on your 5 for execution, but you still brought it to a 5. So I'm execution as a 5. Okay. On the novelty and the idea, I mean, it is stuff that has, was done before, but was it done as well and was it done this way? The whole noir aspect of it, again, a genre that exists. But on the other hand, all genres have kind of existed since all time. So that's what is going to bring me up to the 5, talk myself into it eventually. It was just something that I wanted to float out there to say, well, but again, all, unless you're taking the very, very first film of a particular genre, everything else is just a copy.
I completely understand where you're at. It's not the film where it's an obvious 10, where you're just like, yeah, this is a 10 and let's move on. But it is at least one where I feel like you kind of end up at a 10, but you have to explain it a little bit.
Yes.
So that's
like
fine.
We just did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a 10 average between the three of us.
That was easy maths. Sorry, maths.
Always is. Always is. All right. Classicness. This is a measure of how well or not something has aged in time. And usually it's easier to give points off than it is to give points up. So we started a higher baseline of a 6 instead of a 5. Now, this category lives very much in the gray, and there are very different nuances to everything that we've had in this category over time. So if you listen to multiple episodes, it could slightly change based on our understanding of this category. It is our most amorphous, so we turn instead to our senior nuance correspondent, Dana.
All right. Well, for the most part, I didn't find a whole lot to go up or down with, except one. And that is, I'll give it a full point up because it kind of established that an expectation that if it's a Christopher Nolan movie, it's potentially going to be out of sequence or have some sort of vehicle by which there's going to be some alteration in the time dimension. And so therefore it's become more standard and thus classic. So I'm going to go to a 7.
Perfectly reasonable. I will tell you on this one, I also struggled with anything that I was going to take off or on. There aren't the obvious categories. I will say is now that it has gotten to 25 years, for the most part, I will say it's a bit timeless. The one thing that takes me out of the movie, and you had to have lived through this era for it to make sense and for you to understand some of the formatting. And so like kids today being introduced to this movie are going to have a hard time, is the dated technology, like Polaroids. What the fuck is a Polaroid in 2026?
They're back in again. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
They are in again. You buy them. I know children who got them for Christmas last year.
This movie is entirely different when you have smartphones and video capability and the cloud and everything else, where you could constantly like create basically a small interview film that resets your memory all the time, kind of like 50 First Dates kind of territory. So I'm throwing that out there. I think this movie does change. I did give it a point off, but I gave the point back. So while Dad's at a 7, I'm at a 6.
Yeah. But you're going to say that about any film, like,
I do say it about all these films from about this
but like
era.
a film in the 50s, like, or I don't know, Dial M for Murder. I mean, it's like it's all going to be different. So I don't think. And by the way, Polaroids, as I say, are back in again. I mean, of course it's different because they didn't have that at the time. I was reading some ridiculous discourse on probably Twitter, whatever, about they were talking about. I don't know, was it Parent Trap? I have no idea, something I haven't seen. But the point is that a 12-year-old was sitting in the front seat. And they were going on about, this is just so ridiculous, it takes me completely out. And I'm sat there going, well, what 12-year-old can't sit in the front seat? And apparently, it's different in different states, and it's changed according to time. And, now it's not considered, it's like 13 plus in a lot of states, or according to weight, height, whatever. Yeah. I mean, but then they said, yes, but this film was made whatever years ago, and that back then it was. So if that's taking you out of the film every time, so I think, things obviously age. This could not be made. It would be very different, obviously, made nowadays.
I'm much more forgiving because the tech didn't change in such revolutionary and exponential ways from like 1950 to 1980. Like Back to the Future, other than some of the styles and such, it didn't feel like the tech was all that much different. But once the internet age hits and everything just takes off as far as, because even look at your phone from 10 years ago compared to your phone now, and there's just a noticeable difference. So this entire period from about like 1998 to about 2010, anything that's a modern film, it dates it a little bit for me.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but it is a film from 2001, so I don't think, I think it's fairly timeless. The thing that took me out was, and I know why they put it in there, it's just, it grates and it jars and it is so uncomfortable to watch, is the Natalie scene where she keeps saying the R word. It is, whoa, it is a lot. And what she's shouting at him, I'm just like, and I know what, and I think, doesn't Teddy say it at some point as well? He also has some kind of slur in there, and I'm like, dude. But, and again, we also have to question with the language, is it in there for a reason? And I mean, there was the recent horrible discussion with all the BAFTA and the N word, and then people saying, well, Quentin Tarantino has it in every single film, and
is usually the one saying it.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't want to open that can of worms again because that was just horrible. And anyway, moving on.
We already talked about that several months ago.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm just way off from you guys, but I'm only taking that point off for that. So I think it's timeless, and I think it's a masterpiece, and I think it's a classic. So I'm with a 9.
Well, wouldn't you know, this again finishes at a 7.33
wow.
between the three of us. All right, finally we go to rewatchability, which is our most subjective category, and we usually start with our guest on this one.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a film that definitely benefits from a number of watches. Sorry, Dana, you really should go and watch it again with the knowledge that you have, because you notice different things every time. I mean, or even like rewinding it and then rewatching it maybe in chronological order. I'm actually doing that. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I will. I don't know if I want to, but that, it's just to see the whole story as it unfolds. So I think from a certain rewatchability from that aspect, I think everybody should rewatch it to get the full experience. Now, you brought it up earlier, Tom. You said the Prestige is something that is not so high in rewatchability because once you know the twist, it's kind of ruined. And I agree, but I still enjoy the Prestige, so there's that. And it's the same with this one. I think even though I know where it's going, first of all, I hadn't seen it for a long time, so there was that. And I'd forgotten a lot about it. I think it's a film that you can rewatch for enjoyment and still forget certain details, ironically, and then revisit it maybe a few years later, and you'll still get a lot out of it. I don't think it's something to watch every week. It's not like, I'll just switch on Memento. But you still get a lot of rewatchability out of it and enjoy it. So I've got an 8 on rewatchability. So I find it personally very rewatchable, but I can see that people might say, okay, I'm done. I know what's happening. But it's not really a twist, is it? It's more a reveal as opposed to a twist. But again, there's interpretations we may get to later. I don't know if we want to cover that in final questions because I have questions and thoughts.
I think it is because you're still waiting for the reasoning. And yes, he finds Teddy to be John G. And so you think that the murder is justified all the way from the present, but then going back to the beginning and finding out that he just selected him so that it could satisfy that one thing, so he could no longer be told that there was somebody in his life that was going to prevent him from being able to move on or whatever. I don't know. It's a twist. It's somewhat of a reveal. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I get it one way or another. I will agree, though, that I think the movie does lend itself to multiple rewatches, much in the same way that I felt about Inception, where it's a movie that I feel like I pick up something new every time that I watch it, some small, minute detail or something that I hadn't necessarily noticed. But that was a movie that I enjoyed the first time through. I didn't feel if I understood it. I could at least understand the basic plot, but there was so much of it that I felt like was still hidden in there. And so the second time through made it so much more satisfying to me. I didn't quite have that same appeal from this film. Like, the first time I watched it, I'm like, okay, I'm fine with not revisiting that for a while. The Prestige for me, because it's so linear and it's relatively uncomplicated, and that one quite literally does have a twist where that at the end, it changes how you view the rest of the movie. To me, that's why that one in particular, as opposed to the other two, where it doesn't exactly change the movie, but it does explain the movie a little bit. I guess that's where I have the difference between watches. And I've attempted to go back and rewatch The Prestige, and I can enjoy it. It's just not the same wonder you have the first time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that film, and I agree with you. You're watching it for then a different reason afterwards.
But really. I think on an objective standpoint, I don't think this movie is for everybody, especially because it's not the kind of movie where you can sit down and be on your phone. So it's not going to be what's currently appearing on Netflix very much. It is somewhat high concept. And by extension, I would say that it limits who's probably going to pick up this film, except for the name Christopher Nolan. So I'm going to give this a 7 on an objective front and say, I think there are people that haven't seen the film that could pick it up and really enjoy it, who haven't been exposed to it before, but you have to be in the right frame of mind and have to be willing to engage with a high concept instead of Friday night, I want to veg out and I just want to turn on something mindless. This is not that film.
But then are those people even going to watch it in the first place? So where does the rewatchability start? Because if they don't watch it and don't fully watch it, they're not going to rewatch it. So is the rewatchability only for those that actually get to the end?
I think it is more likely that you rewatch it if you've seen it the first time.
Precisely. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Well, in part because if you rewatch it, then you have already seen it.
Yeah, but then if we're talking about the rewatchability scores, objectively.
It's the probability of rewatching.
Yes.
Is the calculation.
Okay. Just being pedantic.
Well, I'm at a 5 point.
A lawyer
spoken
being
like
pedantic?
a true lawyer.
Yeah.
Mine is 5.5. I probably should rewatch it. I probably will rewatch it at some point. So it's just not going to necessarily be in my rewatch list per se. I will, like I said, I probably will rewatch it, see if I enjoy it more the second time through.
So that will be a 6.83 average between the three of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 90% for Google users and a 94% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.2. So to repeat the categories, this will sound very similar. Legacy, 7.33. Impact and Significance, 7.33. Novelty, a 10. Outlier. Classicness, a 7.33. Rewatchability, a 6.83. And audience score, a 9.2, giving us a final total of 48.02, and currently placing it on our list between The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, between Judgment at Nuremberg and Shane at number 106. Treasure of the Sierra Madre is it's one higher than Judgment at Nuremberg.
Okay.
Respectable.
I mean, it's in among. Rocky is just following Shane. Batman, the original from 89, is in there. From Here to Eternity. Okay. I don't think it's in terrible. It is below Batman Begins. I will say that much. That one's at 98.
Fair.
Inception's at 87. The Dark Knight is at number 3.
Well, that old chestnut. No, but that's fair, I think, because I think there's parts of Memento that do pull pull it down, which is the rewatchability for both of you, and it makes sense because of the rubric. Like
yes,
yeah.
So to be fair to this, Interstellar is at 112, so it places between Batman Begins and Interstellar currently.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that has a little bit more to do with Dana being anti-science fiction, but you'd have to go back and listen to that one. So, anywho, if you have any criticism, complaints, compliments, I know that's rare on the internet, but possibly, you can write us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us anywhere on our socials at gmotepodcast, or you can write us at our website, ronnieduncanstudios.com/gmotepodcast. Or did I not give the email? I can't remember. Wow, this is sad. Bad short-term memory here. greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, in case I didn't give that one. All right. Moving on to remaining questions for this one. First off, how does he remember to get his hair dyed?
Maybe there's a tattoo.
It is one of the weirdest things about this film. His hair is so distinct, but it's got that like NSYNC era cool guy tips dye job that makes no sense to this character. You would think that he, wouldn't remember to get a haircut very much, so his hair would be longer, and 2, a dye job, especially blonde.
Yeah, his hair he's clearly doing himself because it is messy. So I think he's snipping that himself. And the hair, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got a little note in his leg to say shave, so maybe there's another one to say dye hair.
I don't know. He sees a mirror. I don't know.
Next question. How many John or Jimmy G's has Leonard killed? We know of at least 2.
Yeah.
Hard to tell.
2.
It's probably more. Because,
I would guess.
they got 200,000 out of this one.
Well, technically, if you extend it to Jimmy G's, he does kill Jimmy Grotz, so that's 3. I don't know. So you at least have 3. You could be as many as 10, reasonably. If truly, and again, if you're working that Teddy is truthful in the end, that it happened a year prior, you just wonder how much in time, and also what is the time span of this movie? It feels like it only has been a couple of days.
It feels like a couple. You see him wake up from sleeping, I think, twice.
Yeah.
I think 2 or 3 times. And I would say there's no other days in between. That's kind of played out in real time in a way.
Is anyone telling the truth in this story? I've asked that question multiple times in this, but there's a part of me that, based on the fact that we're supposed to believe that Teddy is the one talking to him on the phone and the one slipping notes under his door and messing with him, that Teddy has a specific motivation to get Leonard to help him bump off Jimmy Grotz and then go after John G., as opposed to being the altruistic guy that they present in that final moment where he decides that he's going to lie to himself and kill him. Unless you believe that full stop out, I don't know if I believe anybody's being completely truthful in this movie. We know Natalie's not. We know that the front desk clerk is not. We know that Leonard is completely not. So the only one we're left to believe with at the end of the film is whether or not you believe Teddy was ever being truthful. And I have enough doubts to say I don't think he is.
So what part do you think is not truthful? Do you believe the insulin part of it?
So first off, Leonard Shelby says multiple times during the film, I'm Leonard Shelby from San Francisco. So if Teddy was assigned to his case in San Francisco, all of the plates in town read Nevada. How is Teddy transferring and then taking Leonard with him and then appearing there? I'm wondering if Teddy knows at all, or was the person assigned at all in the beginning to that case. Because it really doesn't make much sense that he would transfer from San Francisco to somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. And then they're going to be in this small town together. And he's going to do what? I mean, how they ended up there at the beginning, or I guess technically the end of this film, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, with Teddy also being an undercover cop at that point. Now, if he had been in like the FBI or something, that would have made more sense. But the FBI is not going after small-time drug dealers, and they're not going after these guys who would have just broken in for basically drug money and raped and killed the wife. Although technically he says the wife wasn't killed. So I think there's a lot of potential doubts to whether or not he's stating anything that's factual.
My take on it is that there's partial truth to it, but I think he is much more crooked than he would lead us to believe. I mean, I guess there's things that speak for the fact that he still is, a cop, but
everybody in the film seems to be manipulating Leonard to their own 100%. Means or ends, including Leonard.
Of course, yeah.
So, in other words, it's a realistic portrayal of human nature?
And this is where I'm going to get to the piece I teased earlier. If you believe Teddy, as I think you're supposed to the first time that you watch it, that would mean that in order for him to have converted and conflated the two different stories of him giving the insulin to his wife and his wife surviving, that means, at least for a period of time, Leonard did create new memories, because he would have had to have had the insulin memories with his wife after the accident to conflate and mix up with the Sammy Jenkins story.
Wait. No.
Yes.
Hang on. If his last memory is of the
says his last memory was the incident. Yes. But Teddy says in the end that his wife survived, and then he was the one to give her the insulin shots so that she ended up in a coma.
Yes, which is the Sammy Jenkins story. Sammy Jenkins also had that condition, but was given his wife. But he said
Sammy Jenkins did not have a wife.
Yes, I know.
So that means that after the incident, his wife survived. She was not killed by John G. She might have been raped, or attacked. So we don't know if that's completely factual or accurate at all. And he would have had to create the memories where he's conflating that he is both himself and Sammy Jenkins, and that he put his wife in a coma. So in other words, he has memories of his wife after the accident that he is now mixed up with the story of Sammy Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is indeed the case, is he a fugitive from justice, or did he escape from a mental ward?
Well, that goes back to what you said about that flash. And my memory of this film, the one thing that I seem to remember, although I hadn't seen it for a long time, I was like, hang on, wait a minute, but Leonard and Sammy Jenkins are actually the same person. It gets revealed at the end. And that was the memory I had of it. So again, changing one's memory. But that must have been my takeaway from that film, was actually, did Sammy Jenkins even exist, or are they the same people? Or is Leonard not Leonard, but Sammy Jenkins?
And that's what I'm saying, is that if you truly believe that Teddy is telling the truth, then it disobeys its own rules of the movie.
Let's just say this. I doubt if it would ever happen, but if Chris Nolan happened to be listening to our podcast.
Yeah, okay.
The last 5 minutes has him just cheesing.
Oh, yeah.
He is just absolutely having a just great time listening to this speculation, because then he's achieved everything he ever wanted.
So famously, Christopher Nolan, who does not have a smartphone, has a burner phone that he has somebody else carry for him that puts all of his scripts on red copy paper so that they can't be copied by anyone, and personally shows up to any of the people that he wants to star in his films and has them read the script in front of him so that they do not disseminate the script to anyone else. That guy is going to be listening to a podcast on what? On what device? That guy is so old school. I swear he probably knows what the concept of a podcast is, but if he's ever listened to one, I would be shocked. But it's fun to think
I love
about.
it.
It's available on YouTube, and if you're streaming on your television.
Again, a guy I don't think probably does that. I think he has somebody else Do you remember defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, former defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the creator of the zone blitz concept scheme, Dom Capers?
Yes, who had to have somebody turn on his computer.
Yeah, somebody else was employed, and their only job was to come in and turn on his computer. To me, that is what Christopher Nolan probably has. He has somebody employed that comes on and turns on his TV and shows him whatever movie he wants to watch.
Fast and the Furious. He loves them. But I knew there was something. Teddy does say that you don't want the truth, you make up your own truth. So do we think perhaps, to do with the guilt that he's filled, that he does have these short-term memories, but he guilts himself, or he creates a new lie to himself. And again, telling the lie, I don't want to repeat, fascist words, but, you tell a lie often enough that it becomes a truth. Is the whole revenge thing part of his own guilt?
That's what I'm saying. In essence, you can believe two things. Either Teddy is telling the truth, at which point the rules of the movie betray themselves. And so then you have these kind of like undetermined plot holes. Or you can say everybody's lying, and so then it's amorphous, make up your own ending as to how it all conspired to get to this point.
Go with that one.
I think that's the only way to view the film.
Yeah, of course.
Then you can just speculate because
Teddy's also not reliable.
Correct.
We've established this.
Correct.
I think this whole thing was a dream by Robert Oppenheimer.
Maybe it's the fourth level of Cillian Murphy's dream in Inception.
You almost had a moment there, and I was able to suppress it, where you said that as I was drinking.
I know.
And I thankfully was able to just, that's slightly funny, and then I just immediately pulled it back. Because me spitting all over my computer screen at this stage in the podcast would be very, very bad.
But it would have been very, very precious.
Anyway, any remaining questions for either of you?
No, you've covered everyone.
I mean, there is the whole thing, but we've kind of covered it. It's like, is it even real, the whole thing? Which...
There's the stuff that we watch on screen, but in the content of the universe of the movie, I have to believe that no one is telling the truth, and so you can make up whatever you want. And everything that exists after the movie and everything that exists before the movie is entirely up to your interpretation.
Don't try to understand it, just feel it.
Oh, fuck off. No, Tenet, you take a flying leap. I want to punch you into the sun. Anyway, all right. Well, Heather, thank you so much for being back with us. You're currently not scheduled to be back until November when we discuss another Christopher Nolan film in The Prestige. But again, please remind the people what you're working on and where they can find you.
I'm on all the socials at Heather J. Stewart, and most of my content is on the Revisionist Almanac channel, but I also pop up from time to time on other podcasts. Recently did a Oscars reaction with Morgan over at the Hall of Film. And yeah, a few other things planned. I don't know. I just look at my calendar, what I have to watch in any particular week, and try and keep up.
Same. Remaining thoughts for the week, Dad?
None. I mean, through the Oscars, and now I'm kind of trying to get back into the swing of other things in my life. Books I want to read and preparing for my next venture. So I'll be doing that over the bit. And looking forward to getting to the Beloit Film Festival and the Wisconsin Film Festival over the next few weeks.
Which, by the time this episode comes out, the Beloit Film Festival will already be over.
Correct.
So then it'll be flashing to the Wisconsin Film Festival. But I think there's enough there for us to enjoy ourselves without feeling like it's a job, as most of award season seemingly does. So right now, we're in this odd malaise until about, I would say, the end of August. And I know that doesn't feel that far away because it's only 5 and like a week or 2 months away from award season again, but it is coming.
No, and people are already talking about freaking Project Hail Mary and saying it's going to get Best Picture, it's going to get Best Supporting Actor, Best Actor, Production Design. Oh my goodness. And I'm like, oh, give it a rest. I've seen it. I think I'm in the absolute minority of people who've seen it, and I'll just say that. So,
well, I'm going to go watch it at some point here. If I have some time. It's a good, like, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening thing. The problem is the next few weekends are going to be controlled by my sports schedule for very, very few times in my calendar year anymore.
Yeah. I saw it. It is a great spectacle. Visual effects, production design are amazing, like fabulous. I just felt every single one of those 156 minutes. And I rarely say that. I love a good long film, but I found the pacing terrible. But everybody else seems to be raving about it. So I'm just sat here on my little island going, well, it was fine.
You're used to being on that island, so
I am.
I'm sure
I have multiple islands. Yeah.
You've set up shop. You've got your books, your movies, all the other things that you need.
Exactly. Certain movies that I do not have, obviously. That's why I'm on that island. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So otherwise, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Next week, for our 306th episode, we welcome back five-time club member and CLP contributor Peterson W. Hill to revisit the Best Picture winner of 1991, The Silence of the Lambs, celebrating its 35th anniversary this year. Directed by Jonathan Demme, written by Ted Talley, cinematography by Tak Fujimoto, music by Howard Shore, editing by Craig McKay, starring Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, Scott Glenn, and Ted Levine. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have, so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Threads, TikTok, or Blue Sky at the handle @GModePodcast. Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.